Well, hey there, I am Brian Goulet of GouletPens.com, and this is episode number 84 of Goulet Q&A. It is June 26th of 2015, and it's going to be a good one. I can feel it. I can feel it in my bones right now. So, what have I been up to for the last week? Well, my kids are at Vacation Bible School this week, so it's 3 hours in the morning. It's not a all-day thing, but Rachel is actually volunteering there as a crew guide, bringing around, I think there's about 150 kids at this thing at our church, so it's kind of a big deal, bigger of a deal than I kind of realized. So it's the first time our kids have ever done it. They're having a blast. It's coming for Rachel. It's not like the ideal timing because she's actually covering for somebody else, our bookkeeper, who's on vacation this week, so she's kind of dual covering that and doing the Bible school thing in the morning. So she's a little busy, a little stressed this week, but she's a trooper. She's hanging in there. So let's see here. We've had a lot of cool stuff coming in this week. So after I recorded Q&A last week, what I do is I record them on Thursday morning, and then I publish them Friday morning. So after Thursday morning, when I published them, it kind of leaked out about the pilot Vanishing Point Stub Nib, and so we kind of got the okay to start talking about that. That's going to be coming mid to late July. So we are, I'd gotten one, I had my hands on one a little while ago, shot some video footage. I haven't had it for months, but I was able to pull up the old footage and shoot a new intro and publish that video out. So that's kind of cool. So you can check that out if you haven't seen it yet. It's going to be pretty exciting. And then literally the same day, it also leaked out about the new Jeroboam 1670 ink called Emerald of Chivor. Chivor, I think, is the more proper way to say it, but the Chivor, would be like the Americanized way. So Chivor, it's an unbelievable ink, unimaginably believable ink, and I know it's going to seem like I'm hyping it up like crazy, but seriously, the ink is mind-blowing. Look at the pictures that we have. We've got it up on our site now. You can check it out. It's seriously incredible. We used it on, Sarah, our photographer, she took and did drops and stuff and kind of blew it around on some Tomoe River paper. And Tomoe River is really thin, so it kind of buckles a little bit. And so where the ink kind of pooled and buckled, it has this deep red kind of sheen, but then with gold and top, it's just unbelievable. So it's just the craziest ink. And I've just been using it. I've got it inked up right now in my Pilot Custom 912 with a stub nib. And it's just crazy. This is the coolest ink. So that'll be coming out in the next several weeks. I don't know exactly when, but sometime in July. So we're going to be hyping that up a little bit. It's going to be mind-blowing. It's going to be awesome. I'm excited about it. And I think what we're going to end up doing, we're actually going to Periscope next week. The plan was actually to do it this week using Emerald of Chivor, but we forgot to put it in our newsletter. We were so upset at ourselves, but we got a pretty decent newsletter following, so we were going to put it in our newsletter that we were going to Periscope and live broadcast as we started playing with Emerald of Chivor, but we forgot to put it in the newsletter. So I'll go ahead and tell you now that next week we're planning on doing that, so check out our newsletter for the exact time. I think we're planning around 4 p.m. Eastern time next Thursday, I think is the plan. But wait to get our newsletter to make absolutely sure. So just another plug for Periscope there. Got a pretty decent following on Periscope. We're broadcasting maybe 4 times a week or so on average. So it's kind of fun. Nice little unadulterated? That seems like really a bad word, but you know what I mean. Just a live kind of behind the scenes look, that's a better way to say it, of kind of what we have going on around here. So I'm really enjoying that. And then we'll probably plan on doing a nicer produced video. Ed Jelly did one for Execlair that looks really phenomenal. Good job, Ed. You did really, really good with that video. I like that a lot. And then let's see here. We just launched the Rhodia WebPlanner 2016 version. So we always get planners around mid to late summer. So 2016 planners are starting to come out. We're not huge into planners, and I got a question about that, so I won't talk about it too deeply. We also launched the Cross Click, which I think I actually have one right over here somewhere. The Cross Click is I don't know where it is. Thought I had one. Anyway, the Cross Click is a click rollerball that uses a cross rollerball mechanism that actually writes really nicely. It's a very, very thin rollerball, and it comes in several different colors. It's really nice. We're not, I know we're carrying more rollerballs these days, and we're not going too nuts with them, but I'm just kind of carrying the ones that I think are really cool. So this is one of those. So that's kind of neat. We got the pink Kaweco Skyline, which is really a bright, kind of Pepto-Bismol type pink. So maybe love-hate kind of thing going on with that pen, but it's here. And then the big one is the new Summer 2015 Edison Nouveau Premier, which is called Fireball. And it is a bright red, looks really cool, a lot of pearlescence, no like swirl or secondary color, it's just pure red. So pretty cool, that's very exciting. So we got a video out specifically on the Fireball, and then just published a video yesterday of our third and final traveling pens video edition, which is backpacking. So mainly like Europe area, but could be Asia, South America, who knows. Wherever you might be backpacking, what pens, ink, and paper to take with you. So some advice there. So that's what we got going on this week. So let's go ahead and get into the questions. I'm going to kick it off with some pens and writing questions. First one is from @Chevchelios069 on Twitter. I probably butchered that. Hey Brian, any news related to the TWSBI Eco? Is there an approximate release date? And you would actually ask this question, I think maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday or something like that. And literally like hours later, I saw a Facebook post update from TWSBI talking about how the Eco is just around the corner. So what's the deal with the TWSBI Eco? Well, it's going to be a $28.99 piston filling TWSBI demonstrator pen. So that's going to be pretty cool. It looks really nice. I haven't seen one for myself yet. All I've seen is the same Facebook kind of TWSBI pictures that you've seen. So I'm not privy to much more than that. I don't really know what nib it uses and stuff like that yet. I would imagine probably the same nib as like maybe the Mini or the 580. I don't know. So as I know more, I will let you know. But however, on their Facebook page, they say mid-July. I would say probably mid to late July, because TWSBI might have it mid-July, but they're in California, we're in Virginia. Usually takes a little bit of time to get to us, and then we got to photograph and all that kind of stuff. So we'll probably have it up late July. So look out for that. We're going to get it up on our site soon, and then you'll be able to sign up for the email notification, all that kind of stuff. So that should be kind of fun. So yeah, that's pretty much it for that one. Next question I have is from Sam F on Facebook. I'm pulling the trigger on an OMAS Arte Italiana Vision on Friday, today. That's cool. I think it'd be a shame not to get the EF Extra Flexibile, and I love nibs with flex. On the other hand, I don't want to be so worried about springing the tines that I'm scared to do everyday writing with it. Exactly how careful do you have to be with those nibs? And this is a tough one because it's, you know, it's an expensive pen. It's a $500 pen. And, you know, when you have a $500 pen that you're flexing out and stuff like that, if you screw it up, it's not going to be cheap to fix it, right? Like, it's going to have to probably be done by a pro. So, you know, it is very soft. I will say that. I have a video on the OMAS Ogiva Extra Flexible. It's the same nib as what's on the Arte Italiana. That's why I haven't done like a specific Arte Italiana Flex video, because I kind of already did that. Same nib as what's on the Ogiva. So it's very soft, and I had one and I sprung the tines like right away because I just wasn't used to a nib that soft. So I think if you go into it knowing that, and you said you have and you love nibs with flex, that could be a double-edged sword, because you know you love flex, so it's not like a total speculative buy. But I'm willing to bet that the pens that you have that you love flexing, you're having to use a lot of pressure in order to do it, relative to what you're having to use with the OMAS. If you have like some vintage, like wet noodle type, really, really soft flex nibs, then this would probably be more like that. It would feel a little more like that. But for most people who are doing it, we have to have some pretty heavy disclaimers, because if you're coming from a Falcon or a Noodler's Ahab or something like that, this pen is going to seem way crazy soft compared to those. And you're going to have to really adjust for that. That said, if you have a very light hand, then I think you can use it for everyday writing. You know, we ended up with the Ogivas anyway, we sold a fair number of the Extra Flexibles, and we didn't really deal with a lot of people that sprung their tines. I think partly because we put so much disclaimer in place, and generally people that are spending that much on a pen might kind of know what they're getting into and be a little more careful. I know Stephen Brown also did a video and he sprung his tines using the extra flexible. So even me and him and some more experienced flex people, we can do that. We're kind of trying to push the limits and so on. So I would say, don't plan on buying it thinking, oh, it's really soft, that means I can flex it even more or anything. No, I would really kind of take it easy with this one. So I can't really tell you a right or wrong answer as to whether you should or shouldn't get it. All I can say is that if you do want to get it, make sure you're using a light touch and that you know you're getting into. It's very soft. That said, if you have a little bit heavier hand or you're weary about it at all, I think you could go the route of getting the 18 karat non-flexible nib. It's still a soft nib. You're still going to get some springiness and perhaps even a little bit of line variation without the same kind of risk, if you will, of getting the extra flexible nib. So I'm not going to discourage you from getting it, but if you do want to get it, just make sure you know what you're getting into. Sound good? Cool. I got a question from Ann T on Facebook. I really like my Pilot Metropolitan fine nib pens. Awesome, so do I. I've tried some next level pens, but have ended up being unhappy with the grip section's shape, or the nib, or the weight, or length of the pens. Am I missing out if I end my quest for the perfect pen for me with the Metropolitan? Do you have any recommendations for other pens that are most similar to the Metropolitans? Thanks. Well, honestly, the Metropolitan is a pretty awesome pen. It's a phenomenal value. It writes really great. If you like the weight and the balance and all these other things, you know, don't feel like you have to upgrade if you're really happy with the Metropolitan. Honestly, you know, there's lots of reasons that people will upgrade beyond that, for sure. Sometimes it's a bit of a quest, if you will, to just discover if there is something better. Especially with the Metropolitan, it's like, that pen wasn't around when I first got into fountain pens. You know, the Lamy Safari was like the go-to starter fountain pen. And for me, you know, not to bash the Safari at all, because I love the Safari. The triangular grip, though, is just not the best for me, and that's okay. So for me, it was like, yeah, this is a great pen. I can swap the nibs. It's durable, love the colors, all that. But the grip is just like not as ideal. So I went exploring and trying to find other great pens. Now, granted, I'm in the business, right? So it's kind of my job to explore and try a lot of different pens. So it's probably a little bit different for me than it is for most other people. For me, I want to try other pens that I know I probably even won't like, just because I need to know about them and be able to give advice and talk intelligently in videos and so on. So for my personal quest, like I've got like 300 some pens, I definitely don't need that many pens. I could probably ink up a pen every day for a year and not have to use the same pen twice. So most people are not in that situation. Some of you are, and you know who you are. You know if you've got a pen problem. If you've lost count of your pens, then you probably have a problem. That's when it gets really dangerous, is when you lose count, right? So that said, as soon as the Metropolitan came out, I was a couple of years into my fountain pen obsession / hobby. And as soon as it came out, I was like, oh my gosh, if only this pen had been around when I first got into fountain pens. It would have been like the kind of end-all be-all pen for me. And I'm a very utilitarian guy. I have some higher end pens, but I mean, you can look at my store. Most of what I sell is really in like the kind of more starter kind of user grade pens. Yes, we have some nicer things, and I definitely appreciate those, but that's not why I got into fountain pens. I came in from like the Preppies and the Noodler's pens and like all those, like the Safari and like more the starter level. And I've kind of like learned to appreciate the higher end stuff as I go. But for me, I'm like a true blood, like utilitarian, function over form kind of thing. So for me, a pen like the Metropolitan for 15 bucks is just hard to beat. So as far as I'm concerned, if you're happy with the Metropolitan, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's kind of where I stand. And I know I'm like a pen pusher, so I should tell you like, oh, you should try all these other things. But honestly, you know, I would say if you really like the Metropolitan, maybe consider getting other Metropolitans, maybe the medium nib, maybe a different color or something like that. They're gonna have new colors that are gonna be coming out this holiday season, some brighter kind of reds and stuff like that. That'll be kind of neat. So, you know, it'll branch out a little bit from kind of the more, you know, professional color scheme they have right now. I say professional, kind of like, you know, they're like animal print colors and stuff like that, but you know, they're much more conservative colors. They're coming out with a little bit more vibrant colors in the fall, so that should be kind of interesting. So I would say, like, don't push it too much. You know, don't go spending money on pens that you may not like. Maybe try to get together with some people you know locally who have pens and just get to try some of theirs. If you happen to be able to get to a pen show and you're able to just kind of hold different pens, maybe that would help you out, you know, just to be able to do that. But, you know, don't go searching for the Holy Grail if you're already holding it in your hand, right? So just because it's an inexpensive pen doesn't mean you have to go searching. That said, if you do really like that pen, I know this is a bit of a jump, but there's a lot of Pilot pens that as you get into the higher range that I think are really nice. Maybe not, I mean, as you jump up to like the gold nib Pilot pens, you're looking at stuff that's going to be 10 times the price as a single Metropolitan. So it may or may not be worth it to you. I can't make that call for you, but what I can say is I love my Pilot Custom 74 and the fine or medium nib. I love them both for different reasons. For different purposes. The E95S is a really cool pen. I think it's awesome, and that extra fine nib, if you like fine nibs, is unbelievable. You know, if you like the Custom 74 and want to get in a piston version, there's a Custom 92 that adds on a bit more price, and I'll actually be talking about that in a future question here in this broadcast. But so yeah, and the Pilot Vanishing Point, I mean, it's a click retractable, super functional, lots of different color options, and they all write really great. You know, if you think the Metropolitan writes great, all of those pens are just as smooth and nice to write with as the Metropolitan, but with a little bit of springiness in the nib because of that gold. So I would definitely point you to some of the higher end Pilots if you are so inclined. If you don't want to go buying several $50 pens as the next level, then you want to just save up and go for the gusto, you know, with the gold nib Pilot pens, I don't think you would be disappointed. Got a question from Jake A on Facebook. Hello, Jake. Been reading some of your stuff on Facebook, shouting you out here a little bit. You asked, are the Noodler's replacement flex nibs proprietary to those pens, or could I slap one on my Jinhao and get my flex on? And Jake, honestly, I partly wanted to answer your question just because of how you phrased it. Slap it on the Jinhao and get your flex on. So, all right, I've kind of answered this in a different way on some previous Q&As. Couldn't remember which one or where it was or anything like that. So I figured I'd go ahead and answer it again, especially Jake, because I know you've been asking a lot of questions. I haven't been necessarily taking them a lot lately, so I'm throwing you a bone here. No, they're not proprietary per se. You know, they're definitely made, it's the same. Okay, so there's a couple different ones. You can get one in the art pack that we have, which is an untipped flex nib. That's a little bit different, not proprietary particularly, but that's a little bit different than what comes on the Ahab Conrad. So if you're getting just the $2 Noodler's flex nib, that is the same flex nib that you're getting on a Noodler's Ahab or Conrad pen. So it's a number 6 size nib, which means yes, you could, in theory, put it on any pen that takes a number 6 size nib. So Edison has a lot of pens that are number 6 size. Monteverde has a lot. Let's see here. The Jinhao does take a number 6. I'll give you a little caveat there in a second. The TWSBI VAC 700. You know, there's lots of pens, Conklin, there's lots of pens that have that number 6 size. However, I find that the Noodler's flex nib is just a little bit thicker in material than some of these other nibs, which really only makes the biggest difference from customers I've been talking to and from our own experimentation here with the Jinhao. So Jinhao X750, 450, 159, they all use a number 6 size nib, which is in theory the same as the Noodler's flex nib. However, it's something about either the thickness or the curvature, or I don't know what. It's a really tight fit to get in there. It's really tough. And some people do it successfully, other people not. So while, yes, in theory, it is something that could be done, it's not like 100% guarantee. It is definitely a hack to take one nib and put it onto another brand's pen, because they're not necessarily made to be compatible. They're somewhat universally sized, but the Noodler's pens are much more forgiving in terms of the nibs that they can take, because it's all friction fit in there. It's got an ebonite feed that you can heat set and stuff like that. Going to a pen like a Jinhao, everything is like injection molded, just cast in place, and you can't really adjust anything. It's either in or it's not. So you can kind of jam it in, force it in a little bit. And then for most people that use it, it's not like, you know, the flow is going to be a little more broken up than a Noodler's pen, because the feed is not necessarily made to keep up with the flow of that flex nib. And because of the curvature of the nib and stuff that you have to bend it in there, it may or may not work that great. So it's not a huge investment. I mean, a Jinhao is 10 bucks maybe, and then $2 for a Noodler's nib. So it's really, it's kind of, in my opinion, it's worth just trying. If you're curious, it's worth just trying it, just so you can mess around. It's not a huge investment, but just kind of know that it's not necessarily a slam dunk. Cool. Got a couple of paper questions this week, so we'll get into those next here after I take a sip of coffee, which I'm really thirsty. I probably should drink water instead of coffee, but I also need to continue waking up, so. You'll notice I have this little thing over here. It says, behind every successful person is a substantial amount of coffee. I'm living proof of that. Okay, so at TweetNaffy on Twitter, asked, can we expect new notebooks and new planners in the coming months? I'm looking for a planner that can take FP ink, fountain pen ink, for those of you who are not in the know for the buzzwords. So I have right here a Rhodia web planner, which just came in 2 days ago, I think, not long ago. So yeah, it's a little bit larger than a Rhodia web notebook. It's actually the size of a Quo Vadis Habana, if you're familiar with that at all. It does have white paper, just like Rhodia. The paper, though, is just a little bit different than Rhodia paper typically is. The reason it's a little bit different is because they make the paper to be slightly more absorbent. They put a little less sizing on the paper for the planners because if you have an extended dry time, like you would on typical Rhodia paper, and you have it in a planner, they figure your planner, you're opening it up, you're jotting something down, and you're closing it right away. You're gonna get a lot of imprinting onto the other side if the ink hasn't dried yet. So they opt to go with a little bit more absorbent paper. Now, it's still fantastic quality paper, and most other planners, most like non-Rhodia or like Leuchtturm planners that I've tried, really suck up the ink a lot. So using fountain pens in most planners is, you know, something where you have to take like the nib size and the ink that you use heavily into consideration, which Heart of Darkness is kind of like my go-to recommendation for any really absorbent paper that seems to work really well with most people, and then the finest nib that you can possibly get. That said, the Rhodia is a little bit better, and you know, we just got these in, we're photographing them and stuff like that. It's a 13-month planner that goes from mid-December 2015 to January of 2017. So you're getting it now, you're gonna get it, you know, well ahead of time for what you need. The format's pretty cool. It's a weekly planner, so it's got, you know, like a daily calendar kind of thing, and then just some grid here on the other side so that you can take your notes. And it's got these perforated tabs here, so as you finish up a week, you can tear it off and then easily flip to where you're at. It does not have a bookmark on it like you have with most of the journals. And for whatever reason, they opted to ditch the pocket. A couple of years ago, they used to have that, but now they don't do the pockets anymore, which I have very mixed feelings about that. It makes it so it's a little bit thinner and whatnot, but I think the pocket is going to be missed. So, you know, that said there. The thing I do want to point out, though, specifically about the paper, is this is 90-gram paper. So it's just a little bit different. It's a slightly thicker than regular Rhodia paper, but slightly more absorbent. So it's a different paper. It's not really the same paper that's used in any of their other stuff. So yeah, that's about it for the Rhodia one. Leuchtturm is going to be coming out with their planners fairly soon. I don't have one yet to be able to show you, but it will be coming. So I think that will also be a good option for you. That paper is pretty darn good for what you're getting for fountain pen. So I would take a look at either of those options. I feel like I needed to conclude my sentence there. Amanda A on Facebook asked, what do you think of cotton paper? Okay, short but sweet, right? I don't have a lot of experience with cotton paper. What I do have experience with is original Crown Mill pure cotton. Got that in a number of years ago. Haven't used it a ton, honestly, because it's only in like tablet form, correspondence paper. Most of the paper I end up using is either like a Rhodia like tablet thing for like notes and to-do lists, which I guess you could use Crown Mill for that, but it's still fancy for that purpose. or I end up using, you know, bound notebooks. So I haven't used that a whole ton, but I will use it from time to time for correspondence. The thing that I really like about cotton paper is it feels really great in the hand, you know, and it feels nice on the nib. It's definitely got more drag than, you know, say Rhodia or something like that. It's not a texture per se, like if you've used a laid paper, like Original Crown Mill Classic Laid or Goulet Verge de France, you will notice there's like a very much of like a speed bump, like a lumpy kind of texture to that. That's what laid paper is. It's not like that. It's very consistent, but it's just more, it's got more drag, so it's not as smooth as typical other paper, but it still feels kind of soft. So it's hard to explain a little bit how that feels, but it has more resistance when you're writing, which some people really like. So for those of you that like a little more drag, I think you would like it a lot. Another thing with the cotton is it's going to be a little more absorbent, okay? So it's going to have a little bit faster dry time than you would have on, say, like a Clairefontaine Triomphe stationery, for example. That stuff is like super slick, really ink resistant, but long dry time. So that you're going to get a lot of shading, you're going to get a lot of, you know, sheen and stuff like that. When if you're using inks that do that, you're not going to get that on the cotton. So that's kind of the trade-off. You're going to get a little bit softer feel, a little bit more drag, and it's going to feel really nice on the hand, but it's going to be more absorbance, so faster dry time, that's kind of cool. But at the same time, you're going to lose a little bit of the pop and the vibrancy of your ink. So if you're using a bright ink or an ink with a lot of shading or an ink with sheen, it's going to suck a lot of that up because it's soaking all that ink into the paper. So if you, for example, are getting the new Herbin Emerald of Chivor, and you're really excited about that, and you go and you throw that on your cotton paper, you're going to be a little disappointed because you're not going to get the same pop and sheen as you would on, say, Tomoe River or Clairefontaine Triomphe or something like that. So you just got to go into it knowing that. That said, I think most of the people that like using cotton paper actually find that to be an appealing thing for them. Believe it or not, I get emails from people saying, you know, what's wrong with my pen? I'm getting this color variation from light to dark when I write. Is my pen broken? I don't like this. I don't want this. And it blows my mind because to me that is like one of the most appealing things about fountain pens is the shading and that color variation. But some people literally they want the flattest, most even looking ink that they can get, and that is what they're striving to achieve. So that's okay. You know, if you want that, go with a more absorbent paper such as a cotton paper, and you'll get much more even tone to your color, and it's not going to be shading and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's not like feathering and bleeding and stuff like that because it is really good paper, but it's gonna just kind of mute it a little bit, if that makes sense. So yeah, overall, I would say it's not my favorite paper, but I do enjoy it for when I'm in the mood for that type of experience. And what I really like that paper for is if you're going for kind of like a more of a classic look. So if I'm using like a sepia type of ink or like a, you know, a more of a dark brown like Herbin Lidete or something like that. You know, it's a little bit of a cream colored paper, you know, a little flatter using a kind of a brown ink. It just gets kind of more of that older kind of feel to it, more of that vintage kind of feel, and I kind of like that sometimes. So that's what I'll use it for. Cool. Got a couple of ink questions this week. First one is from Lynn on Facebook, which is a good, interesting question here. I'm glad to take this one on. Can you sell erasable inks or ink erasers? Which inks can be erased? Can you ask Nathan to see if he would make ink eraser fluid? Okay. I'm going to answer the last question first. I don't know that Nathan would be interested in any type of erasable ink because he is like Mr. Permanent. He is all about creating the most permanent ink that you can possibly get. That has been like what's been driving him ever since he started Noodler's ink with Noodler's Black, and I think it was in 2003 he created that ink and had a contest to see if anyone could possibly remove that ink off the page without a trace. And there was a grad student at MIT that used some crazy laser to remove the ink off the paper, and Nathan awarded him $1,000 for being able to do that. You know, that was the contest he did. And then he formulated the Warden series of inks to be laser proof. So he wanted to absolutely make sure that he could have the most permanent ink possible. That is part of what drives him. That said, he does make conventional fountain pen inks and things that aren't permanent. That's not all he makes, but that is where he is like hard driving focused on in terms of his ink creation, I guess, where he kind of pushes the envelope. So, you know, I don't think I've ever specifically asked him if he would create an erasable ink. I think it would be an interesting challenge for him, but I don't know if he would really be interested in it or want to take it on. It would be interesting. I don't know. Maybe I'll next time I talk to him, I'll have to ask. That said, I don't know of any fountain pen ink that is erasable, period. I don't know technically if it's even possible, just being completely frank and honest with you. The erasable ink, the only erasable ink that I actually am even aware of, there could be more, but the only one that is on my radar is the Pilot Friction, which I think I may have one here in my pen cup that is up in the sky. Ah, Friction. Where are you? I thought I had you here. I don't know, Friction. Let me see. I know I have one around somewhere. I'm going to test your patience to see how willing you are to sit there while I look for this pen. I won't look for it long, I promise, because I don't know that I'm going to find it handy here anywhere. If I don't have it in the next 20 seconds, I'm going to stop looking. Bear with me. Bear with me. Nope. 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 I'm not finding it. I'm getting disappointed in myself. Dang. Okay. Yep. Found it. Yes. Thank you for waiting. I have a Pilot Friction here. I don't sell this pen. I could if you're interested, but it's a ballpoint. And you know, I'm already kind of pushing the limits of some of your, you know, your feelings of legitimacy towards me in the fountain pen world by selling rollerballs. If I started carrying ballpoints, I feel like I would just lose all respect for you. But maybe that's not the case. Share with me one way or another in the comments. I'm happy to know. But the Pilot Friction is a pretty cool pen. So I was given this as a sample, okay? But it's a ballpoint pen, right? So it's kind of a cool little click mechanism here. But it's got ink and you write down and it looks kind of cool. And then it's got this little thing on the cap that looks like an eraser. It's not actually an eraser. What it is, it's like a textured kind of plastic, right? And when you rub over top of the ink, the very specially formulated ink, it creates heat by friction, and that heat causes the ink to disappear. And that effectively erases the ink. The ink is actually still there. It just goes clear and you can't see it anymore. The cool thing about it too is if you take that piece of paper and you put it in the freezer, it'll come back. So could be kind of a neat little thing. I don't know, maybe write some secret messages or something to somebody. I don't know. Could be an interesting kind of thing. It's just kind of cool, right? Like, so it's like, it's a ballpoint and I don't want to carry it, but it's really cool. So I'm kind of tempted. I don't know. Maybe let me know how you feel. But it is really kind of neat. So yeah, maybe I should give you a demonstration. I just feel like I should. What the heck? While I have it here, okay, bear with me. I don't know how easily you're going to be able to see this, but here we go. So I've got a piece of paper, a little emerald of Chivor that I was writing with, so a little sample there. So just to give you an idea, I'm going to write with the friction right there. You can see that that's blue. And then as I take the little friction, it's legitimate ink. As I go through and do the friction thing, you can see that it is rubbing away and kind of erasing the ink, right? Like, that's kind of cool. I don't know. I'm tempted, but haven't pulled the trigger yet. It's been many, many months since I've been aware of this. Oh, let me get you out of my face here. I don't know. So I'm very torn. I'm very, very torn inside. That said, I'm not aware of any fountain pen ink that does or has ever existed that's been erasable. Maybe some of you out there who are big ink buffs are aware of some ink from the past that has been erasable. And if that is the case, please let me know in the comments, because I would be super interested to hear about that. But in my 6 years of experience in the fountain pen world, of spending quite a bit of time in the fountain pen world, I've never heard of an erasable ink. Could be kind of neat. I don't know. If anybody could do it, it would be Nathan, but you know, I'll have to ask him about that. It'd be kind of neat. So thank you for asking that, Lynn. Very interesting question. Got a question from Joshua T on Facebook. If you haven't already, can you discuss fast to dry inks? What are your favorites? What are the pitfalls of some of these? Okay, in general, I don't like them, just to be completely honest. I don't have a need for them, so I don't use them because the pitfalls are too great for me to really like them at all. So the whole idea behind a fast dry ink, I think for most fountain pen makers that make a fast dry ink, something that's specifically called like quick dry or fast dry, it's for left-handed writers, people who are writing and they need something that dries in a matter of seconds so that they can smear their hand over top of it and not smear the ink. That's the purpose of it. However, in order to be able to achieve that effect with a dye-based fountain pen ink, it has to be very absorbent and go into the paper quickly. And what happens basically is rather than drying on top of the paper, it absorbs in and then dries into the paper. And the only way that it can accomplish that is if it goes in and spreads out quickly and kind of dissipates itself so that it's not sitting on the top anymore. So the trade-off is that you get an ink that looks very flat, you don't get a lot of pooling, no shading, none of that kind of thing, and you're going to get much more of a propensity towards feathering, spreading, bleed through, stuff like that. So going with finer nibs is better and helps with that, but even still, using some of these fast drying inks, a lot of people who are even lefties don't even like using them because the trade-off can sometimes be so great in terms of how the ink actually looks on the page. If you're going for pure functionality and you're using an extra fine nib and you don't really care that much about the feathering and spreading and stuff, it's a great option for you, something to consider. Private Reserve has a number of quick dries that they call fast dry. Noodler's has the Bernanke series. That's kind of more my favorite, but they're kind of not the most exciting colors, the black and a blue black, and you know, it's just not the craziest ones. You know, so the vibrancy of the colors is a huge trade-off. You know, however, they do dry pretty quickly. So if you need it, they're there, but I don't know anybody who uses a fast dry ink that doesn't absolutely need it. Cool. Roberto A on YouTube said, in the last Q&A, in episode 83, you explained the difference between Noodler's Black and Black Eel, which is lubricated, so you can check that one out on episode 83. Do you know what is different in X Feather? Thank you. You're welcome, Roberto. So X Feather is another Noodler's ink. It's very similar to Black and to Black Eel. The main difference is going to be with that one. It's a dark black, very dark. The main difference is it's a little bit thicker. Like the viscosity is lower, I think. I always get mixed up as to whether it's higher or lower. It's thicker ink. I think that means it has lower viscosity. Viscosity is how thin something is, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong there. It's been a little while since I've been in school. So low viscosity, I think. It's very thick ink. So I actually know some people who do some like dip pen calligraphy using Noodler's X Feather. So if you don't want to use a pigmented kind of calligraphy ink, X Feather can work. Or if you're using, you know, an ink on paper that's really absorbent and just, you know, doesn't handle most fountain pen inks well, X Feather could be a good option for you. I find that between Noodler's Black, Heart of Darkness, and X Feather, you're usually able to find one of those three that works well on your specific paper. It's really tough because like there's no one ink that it's like this doesn't feather on anything. X Feather can still feather on some papers because some are just really, really absorbent. And sometimes Heart of Darkness will do a little better than X Feather on certain ones. You kind of need to play around with them a little bit. So that's where samples can really help, can give you an idea without having to buy a whole huge bottle, especially because Heart of Darkness only comes in a 4.5 ounce bottle. X Feather you can get a 3 or 4.5 ounce. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, so that's really kind of the deal with X Feather. It's a little bit thicker. The trade-off is it's got a longer dry time. So the ink kind of more sits on the page and then dries there. It will absorb in, still permanent and everything, so you're still getting the qualities of Noodler's Black, but the dry time is going to be a little extended, sort of like Black Eel. So if you want a Black Eel kind of thing, but you want something that is going to be a little bit better at kind of feathering resistance, X Feather might be a good option for you. Cool. I actually don't have any personal questions this week. Didn't get any that I selected at least, so I don't think I even got any this week. So that I would consider to be personal questions. So I guess nobody wants to know anything about me specifically. That's okay. This whole thing is kind of personal anyway. Yeah, it's all right. So nothing classified as personal. So, you know, I'd love to get some personal questions for next week. That'd be great. So I do have a couple of business questions though. So let me take another sip of coffee and I'll get into it. JK, J-A-Y with a K, J-K, not just kidding, on Facebook, asked, have you looked into fixed interval discounts for repeat customers? A website recently gave me a 3-day coupon for a recent birthday, and I thought it was a nice touch. If you don't have the user's birthday, you could key off their first order, etc. Okay, yeah, there's lots of options for discounts and things like that we could do. We didn't have a lot of the ability to do that on our old website that we had last year. We changed over to a new platform in November, and we are considering what some of our options would be. It wasn't, having more ability to do customized discounts and stuff wasn't necessarily our motivation for switching, but I think it is more of an option for us. We're still actually kind of finishing out the original statement of work. So we are devoting more of our resources to still kind of getting the original things we had committed to. So we're still working on that. So we haven't really gone headfirst into what building future like discounting type things could be. Any of you who are in the tech world, developer world, you know what all could possibly be involved with, you know, migrating over a 5-year-old e-commerce store with 3,500 products. It's a bit of work on a new platform. So we're still working on that kind of stuff. Still kind of finishing up some of the last things, and then we're thinking about where do we want to go from here. So we definitely toyed with the idea. There's lots of different routes to go. And honestly, I'm not like super well studied up on the best types of discounts and promotions and stuff like that. That's one game I haven't really played in very much yet. So I don't really know the best practices. I don't really know the best way to go about it. Everything we focus on so far is we'll charge, you know, a very fair price that we can for doing all that we do, and we'll focus heavily on education, content, doing this kind of stuff. So I'm not opposed to doing that kind of thing. It just hasn't been the focus thus far, partly because it wasn't necessarily an option to do it well before. Now that it is a little bit more of an option and will become more of an option over the next 6 months probably, we'll start to look at some of those things. So I'll be starting to do kind of case studies on different businesses and what works well as far as promotions and stuff like that. You know, obviously, if you're into economics at all, you know there's no such thing as a free lunch. So if you're getting some kind of discount or promotion, it's got to be made up somewhere, somehow, either in volume or in, you know, selling more product or whatever it is, reaching new customers, whatever kind of thing. So there's a lot of moving pieces as far as that kind of stuff goes. So I'll have to think about it really intentionally. So I really kind of address this question mainly because I don't want you to think like, you know, screw you guys, I want to keep all the money I can. It's really not about that necessarily. It's really just a matter of I haven't devoted a lot of brain power and resources to developing things in that way yet. I still view that we're kind of building our foundation, and then we're kind of like going to be adding that stuff on top as it kind of makes sense too. So I'm interested to know if any of you are in like kind of the e-commerce world or have any advice or know of any white papers or anything like that. Feel free to link it up in the comments and whatnot. I'd be more than happy to read them and take all that in consideration. Or if you just have an opinion or you know another company that does a good discount thing that you really find a lot of value in. I'm not trying to trick anybody or dupe anybody into buying more stuff. I really want to do things that add value to your life and to your writing experience. So if there's anything that you see that would be of genuine benefit to you that I could offer, I'd be more than happy to take it into consideration. At Inky Wrist on Twitter asked, as someone who placed 2 orders this week, does your team ever start to recognize names that come through often? Well, thank you for your patronage, first of all. And yeah, we definitely recognize names. Probably not as much now, being higher volume that we are than it was back in the early days. It used to be it was just Rachel and I. We would process every order that came through and handwrite notes ourselves, and we would recognize people quite a bit. We also handled all of the emails personally. We also took all the phone calls personally. Obviously, as we've grown, it's gotten a little bit harder because we have a team of people. So we might have, you know, for example, we still do the handwritten notes, just like we did literally from order number 1, did handwritten note, still doing it today, except now we have 6 people in our customer care department that are handwriting notes, not all day, but you know, that could be handwriting your thank you note on any given order. So it might be different people that are seeing you place those orders. However, they're all very social. They all talk, you know, especially if you have, you know, kind of a unique name or a unique location, or you happen to be from like the same hometown that one of them is from. You know, if you have some kind of, or you got something really interesting in your order comments or something like that, you know, definitely there are lots of names that we'll recognize as the orders kind of come through. You know, with what we always tell our team here, this goes for our order processors, customer care, you know, our social media folks, our fulfillment team even, we say like, hey, this is an order, but this is not just an order number or a dollar amount or a list of products. Like every order that comes through is a person that placed that order. So the name on that order really matters. So we treat every order that comes through as if you were like, you know, mentally we treat it as if you were a customer physically in our store and we were taking care of that order. We treat it with that same kind of respect. So we're not just like throwing junk around and tossing things in and making fun of names and that kind of stuff. Like we are very respectful and we treat everybody as if you were there like in the room and we are taking care of that order. That's how we train our folks here, to treat it like that. So get a lot of like kind of respect that way. And I think that's what part of why you see there's so much care. And care is our 7th core value here. So that is one way that we live that out through and through. So that said, yeah, we definitely recognize some names. Sometimes it's kind of tough because like, you know, you might have, you know, one avatar or like Inky Wrist, like your Inky Wrist on Twitter. But you might be really active on Twitter, but when you're placing orders, you're using your actual name. So we may not make the connection between you unless you are telling us like, hey, I'm Inky Wrist on Twitter, or you have your name, like your actual name on your like Twitter profile or whatever it is. Or it might be like Facebook is different than Twitter, is different than Periscope, is different than, you know, Reddit. So it's like we may actually be interacting with you in 5 different places in 5 different ways, not realizing that it's you in those 5 different ways. So it always helps whenever you're on a platform, be like, hey, yeah, I'm so-and-so on Fountain Pen Network, or I'm so-and-so, you know, whatever. Or like in your order comments, like, hey, I follow you guys on Reddit, I love this, da-da-da-da. That helps us to know, you know, and we are, our purpose statement is to prove that business can be personal. So we actually really care a lot when you place an order comment. I mean, sometimes it's like, hey, can I get this notebook in green? Okay, yeah, we'll honor that. But sometimes it's like, hey, I love you guys so much. I've been following you for a year and just want to let you know I'm so-and-so on Twitter and I love when you do blah. You know, I love the Monday matchup or whatever it is. You know, that helps us so tremendously and it gives us a great deal of satisfaction when we're processing your order that you've placed maybe 2 or 3 times that week. So thank you for your patronage for sure. And, you know, just throw us a note every now and then in your order comments. We love to read that kind of stuff. We really do. I'm going to take it home this week with a couple of troubleshooting questions. One question from Alex S. on Facebook. I bought a Pilot Custom Heritage 92 recently, and I love this pen. Wrote that in all caps there. I love this pen. That 14 karat nib is awesome. Agreed. It's the same nib that's on the Custom 74, my favorite pen. This is my first pen over $50, and I'm terrified of posting the cap for fear of it scratching up the barrel. Is there any concern, or am I being over dramatic? I would say you're being appropriately dramatic, Alex, given the fact this is your first expensive pen. And it is an expensive pen. You know, this one is over $200, so you really went for quite a jump there. I've got one right here. It's a beautiful pen. I love the way it writes. I am a fan of basically all Pilot pens. Everything like Metropolitan, and yeah, I love the only Pilot pen I'm not as crazy about is the Plumix. It just, for me, it just doesn't do it. The squid look, I call it the squid pen, you know, it's just a little weird. And the nib is not the smoothest. You know, it's a stub nib, it's a $9 pen, but other than that, I love the Varsity, I love the Metropolitan, the Custom 92, the 74, A23, Justice, you name it. The E95S, the Vanishing Point. Pilot just has so many great pens. They really, really do. So yes, you've spent a lot of money on this pen and you are concerned about its care. I understand that and I don't think you're crazy. I would tell you you're being crazy if you're being crazy, but you're not. So that said, I took a little bit closer look at this specific pen. You know, it's a piston filling pen. So a lot of times with piston filling pens, they will have, you know, have it where the piston knob, which is built into the pen here, is, you know, untwisted on the back there. But it's usually a little bit smaller than the rest of the pen so that it can fit into the cap. And because the cap fits onto the pen, you don't want it to fit onto the filler knob, because then when you twist the cap, it would push the piston down possibly and get ink out of the pen. You don't really want that. So most piston filling pens have it where the cap grips onto the body of the pen, right? Theoretically, over time, if you're posting and posting and posting and posting, it could get some light scratches on there, right? First off, that could happen eventually anyway. It's kind of like when you get a new car and you don't want to get any dings or dents or scratches or bugs or dirt or rain, water, droplet, you know, imprints or whatever, you know, it's like you want it to stay perfect, right? But eventually, you know, somebody's gonna ding that thing in an airport parking lot and you're gonna be so pissed. But then when it does, you're like, okay, good, at least that first ding is out of the way, right? And then you can kind of breathe a little bit. You're kind of in that situation right now. So I can say, sometime in the future, it's gonna happen, and I know it's gonna be a big emotional event, but at some point you're gonna get a scratch or a ding or something on this pen, and then you're gonna be upset about it, but then you're gonna get over it and it's gonna be okay. So you just wanna know that you're not like intentionally causing it, right? And that's okay. So looking a little bit closer at this pen, I'm looking at, you know, and this is easy because you can tell because it's a clear pen. I'm like posting and unposting it, and I'm seeing like, okay, what part of the cap is actually gripping onto what part of the pen? And as I'm looking at it, you'll notice that there is a little silver ring here. Not unusual at all, so it's a little silver ring that is on the back of the body of the pen, you know, that kind of stops the filler knob. And that silver ring is pretty much flush with the body of the pen. And as I'm capping it, it's not just like the end or the threads or something like that that's gripping onto the pen. It's not. It's actually these, you know, parts of the pen. It's like, you know, it's almost fluted, I guess would be the way to describe it. So it has these like flutes that are kind of like additional material that kind of come up. It's very, very subtle, but you can see it in here, like right around this area. And it kind of like eases up into there. And so it's actually only like 1, 2, 3, 4 points of plastic here that are actually gripping onto this pen. It's still a firm grip and it kind of eases into it, but then it kind of grips on. And I can't tell if it's gripping onto that metal ring or if it's actually gripping onto the plastic. But either way, because of where it's gripping right over top of like where these threads are. That's where those little flutes are going. So it looks like the cap is like gripping all the way up here, but that honestly is not even touching. I'm looking at it very closely. That's not even touching the body of the pen. It's really only gripping right here, right around that ring and those threads on the body of the pen. So even if you were to see any type of scratches whatsoever here, it would be over top of the threads, which I think would mask any fine scratches that you would see anyway. So I don't think you have to worry about it maybe quite as much as you think you do. So if you really want to post this pen, I think you can do it without really having to stress about it too much. Sound good, Alex? Glad to help you out. Last question I have for this week is from Ricky J on Facebook. How can we increase the flow on the Pilot 78G medium nib? I had a really dry flow and I took the pen apart and decided to run, hold your breath, a kitchen knife through the slit in the feed. Should I do it again and try shaving it a little to make that slit a little bit wider? Also, Parker Quink sucks, LOL. Okay, a kitchen knife. That concerns me a little bit, okay? So that's a very blunt instrument. Maybe it was kind of a sharp knife, but even still, you don't have a lot of control with that thing. And you know, I don't have a Pilot 78G here to show you today. It's a relatively inexpensive Pilot pen. It's got a plastic feed. Trying to increase the flow on a plastic feed with a knife is a bit of a risky venture. Those who do try it usually use an X-Acto knife because you get a little more precision, the blade is thinner. Using a kitchen knife is really not my recommendation. So that said, you know, I think based on, you said that Parker Quink sucks. I don't know if you've used any other inks yet, but Parker Quink is a very dry ink. So my first recommendation for anyone who's having dry flow issues is, first off, clean your pen. Just clean it out, do it really thoroughly, because that right there might be the issue. Okay, that's kind of like a blanket thing that you should always try first, because it doesn't cause any harm, doesn't cost you anything, just clean the pen. Just costs a little bit of time. Next thing is to, if you have any brass sheet, some very fine brass sheet, try flossing the tines of the nib if you've been using the pen for a little bit. If it's a brand new pen, maybe not, but if you're having any kind of flow inconsistency or writing really dry, flossing the tines can help. Because if you got any paper fiber or, you know, dried caked up ink or whatever that could be in there, that can help. I don't know whether this pen disassembles or not because I don't have a 78G. I want to say it probably does. You can probably pull the nib and feed out of there. If you've got a lot of caked up ink, stuff like that, it can make it easier to clean out. A lot of times it's ink that causes that flow. You know, dried up ink that causes the flow there. Well, actually, I'm guessing you did disassemble it since you did run a knife through your feed. So you probably maybe already tried that. So clean it out and all that stuff. Part of it might, you know, I think it's important to note here that when you are using a pen like this, you know, it's Pilot, so Pilot's nibs tend to run a little bit finer than maybe other pens. So it may not be an issue of the pen writing dry. It may just be writing the way that it's supposed to write. And you're not going so much from a restoration, getting the pen back to where it should be kind of state, but you're actually getting into altering the pen and making it into something where it wasn't originally intended. Widening the feed channel would certainly do it. And just a little bit of terminology here, you know, just to correct your terminology just a bit. You said the slit in the feed. The slit is generally referred to on the nib. That's where the ink comes through on the nib that runs all the way to the tip from the breather hole. The feed channel is what you're actually talking about. That's what runs through the feed. The ink flows down the feed channel and then goes in through the slit of the nib. Just a little fine point there. Not a huge deal. I totally get what you're saying and what you're talking about here. So you're talking about kind of going from just cleaning the pen and kind of restoring, making sure it's, you know, acting properly. And when you're talking about widening the feed channel and stuff like that, or deepening the feed channel, now you're talking about actually altering the pen, which your likelihood of screwing something up beyond repair is significantly higher, especially if you don't really know what you're doing. Not to say that you don't perhaps, but that's when you get into, like, you really have to kind of learn your pen and know it well. But you're dealing with a 78G, you know, this is not a super expensive pen. So this would be a good pen to maybe experiment on, realizing you're taking your pen's life into your own hands. So, you know, it's perfectly okay. I wouldn't recommend doing it on, say, a custom 92. So that I would say leave it alone. Don't do it, or return it to wherever you bought it if you feel that it's not acting as it should within the appropriate window of whatever place you bought it, etc. But the first thing I recommend is cleaning it out. Sounds like you might have already done that. The next thing I would recommend is try a different ink. Quink is a very dry ink. It may just be that if you use a normal ink or a wetter ink, like a lubricated ink, it would write great and just as you want. Or the next thing beyond that I would try is maybe switching your paper. Maybe it's that your paper is really ink resistant and you need something that's a little more absorbent and that can kind of help to, like, draw the ink out of the pen a little bit. That might help. Or it could be that your pen is really, you know, junky and you're getting like fibers up in it and it's getting all dried up, and that's where the ink cleaning point would come in. So I always try to lean towards doing non-alterations first. So cleaning, changing the ink, changing the paper, that kind of stuff. Because as soon as you get into altering and stuff like that, then you're kind of on your own, you know, as far as what you end up doing. You're violating warranties, if you screw something up, it's not easy to get replacement parts for just about all pens. So you're gonna end up throwing away the pen if you screw something up. So realize that's okay. I think if you do that, knowing that you're doing that, it's probably okay. But that is where you would probably want to either just realize you're going to get into some experimentation, or maybe watch a video of somebody else that's specifically done that and try to heed their advice on that given pen. Cool? But Ricky, wish you the best of luck on that one. So that's all I've got for this week. The question of the week that I'll give to you, kind of shouting back to the Metropolitan question, is do you have more of like an introductory level pen, or maybe a pen that you got on kind of early into your fountain pen career that you just always keep going back to? You know, maybe a pen that you got and you tried to get more expensive pens thinking it would be something greater, but you have that staple kind of starter pen that you really love and just continually use. I would love to know what pen that is. So that's the question of the week for this week. You can shout it out in the comments on YouTube or on the blog. And I realize I've gone the entire broadcast here without addressing my sweet new shirt that I just have to shout out. Super excited that Reading Rainbow is going to be coming back. Lots of props to Lamar Burton for bringing that back. For those of you who aren't aware of that, he started a Kickstarter, raised millions of dollars to bring it back. I'm a big fan. I have young kids, and it would be kind of cool to see that booted back up for my kids as they get into reading on their own. I read to them a lot. They both love reading, so that's really kind of sweet. So picked this up at Target, nice little pixelated Reading Rainbow there. Got to shout it out. So that's it for this week. So thanks so much for joining me. You can check out a lot of the products I talked about here on gouletpens.com. Please leave me comments, questions, whatever you want in the blog or YouTube in the comments section, and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. It's just the right thing to do. Hope you enjoyed this broadcast. Have a fantastic week, and right on.